Hello, Space Cadets, it's your pal Vector Spaceman, once again, coming to you live from Harbor Station, broadcasting on all frequencies to our beautiful planet Earth. Whether you're watching us live tonight or catching us after the show, don't you know we're glad to have you on board? Thanks for helping us to make outer space the place to be, as we get set to rocket into yet another session of all the things we like to love and love to share. Today's Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. Welcome to the show, everybody. I've got some good news today. I've got almost all of my Christmas shopping done now, thanks to the wonderful modern miracle that is online ordering. So we're feeling less stressed as we get closer and closer to the holidays. We can devote our attention to the program and, of course, our wonderful Space Cadets. If you missed the last show, we absolutely breezed through Super Fancy Pants Adventure, the 2017 retail release of the classic Flash platforming series. I hadn't anticipated the sheer swiftness with which we would sail through the rest of the game, but we breezed right through the story mode, all in one night. There's still a few challenges left that we could try out, but I'm not sure that would fill out an entire show. So maybe we'll leave that for a lazy weekend stream someday. You know I'm down for it. I just can't get enough of that high-speed, parkour type action. Now, to stay up to date with all of our broadcasts, be sure to follow Vector Spaceman on Twitter, YouTube, and right here on Twitch. Well, Space Cadets, because of our unintentional speed run of last night's game, we had to decide what to do with our freed up schedule. Should we just take a day off? No, we're going to be less active over the holidays anyways, so better to find something to fill the time with, right? Should we play some other game? Well, I considered that, but then I thought, why not use this opportunity to try out something completely different, something I've been talking about doing on the channel, something I've been wanting to do on the channel, but just hadn't pulled the trigger on. And that, Space Cadets, is to do some on-stream artwork. Work on our sketching skills, and since I've been wanting to update the model to add a little holiday flair, I thought why not kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, and have a little laid-back art stream where I do some live 2D work. We're going to try to make some new Spaceman assets, start to finish, right here on tonight's program. That sounds like fun, right? Get a look behind the technical curtain, see how the sausage gets made, and all the while we'll have a little chit-chat and enjoy the evening together. Sounds like a plan, but before we begin, as always, you know what we have to do, Space Cadets. We gotta give a quick little shout out, a quick little salute to some of our favorite followers and members of the community. Now, longtime listeners, you'll know that we love to see familiar faces here on the show. So for those of you listening live tonight, feel free to drop a comment in the chat and join the conversation. And who are we taking a look at tonight, Space Cadets? Tonight, we're showcasing Mocha of the Minute Mocha Show, a variety streamer with a wide range of content, great streaming personality, and all-around great broadcaster. I like that she's been streaming Coffee Time lately, very on-brand, right? I always think it's funny when personality streamers synergize with their subject material, so to speak. It's cool to see. Now, she's debuting a new model this Saturday, December 18th, on her show at 4 p.m. Eastern. Let's show her some support, Space Cadets. She just crossed a 100 Twitch follower milestone, but I'm sure she's on her way to even bigger achievements. So Mocha, thanks for supporting the channel. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day. And while we're on the topic of channel milestones, viewers, let's not forget that we're shooting for our own goals this month of 50 followers by the new year. We're oh so close. Remember, it don't cost nothing to join the Space Cadets, and you'll always be in the loop when we get together for a good time. Alright, Space Cadets, let's get started with today's show. Grab some snacks, some drinks, whatever you need. Bust out that pretension. Let's idle our time away just like real artistes, shall we? Let me pull up the tablet here, because that's what we're going to be using. And let's head on over to the big screen, shall we? There we go. Alright, we've got screen capture for the very first time. Hoping this all goes smoothly. Let's see here. Oh, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna drop the station background music here. And we're gonna bring up a little more thematic sounds. There we go. Some holiday sounds. There we go, that sounds good. Let me know if that needs adjusting at all, but I think that's pretty good. Now, what's the workflow for this? What I want to get done tonight, let's take a look at the existing model, shall we? Let me tab over here. So here we have a spaceman, a fully formed spaceman. This is what we use when we go into Live 2D, how we arrange everything. top to bottom here, all the different assets, which then get put into separate parts and skewed, so even tiny little details like zippers, pockets, but even shadows themselves get their own little layer here. And what I wanted to do today, if we can just move it out of the way here, just pop the head off, there we go. What I wanted to do was add a few more festive elements to the outfit, something that we can toggle between for holidays. What I was thinking was that we could do some sort of scarf around where the collar is on the model, and then maybe some sort of mittens or gloves, some sort of whole one-piece mitten or something like that. I had been thinking that maybe we could maybe add some like Santa Claus-esque ruffling around the edges of the shirt sleeves or the bottom of the shirt, something like that, but I don't want the assets to overpower the base model too much. So I think what we're going to start with is just the scarf, and then if we get time, we'll move on to the mittens, and then we'll see how that looks once we rig it up and put it all into motion. Hopefully we'll have enough time tonight to get at least a concept, and then I'll either continue it in the off stream, or maybe we'll come back to this for another art stream next week. That'd be fun too, as we're gearing up for the holidays. Alright, so first things first, as some of you know, all of our assets get made in the now defunct Adobe Flash. That was a big inspirational part of the design aesthetic behind the model and the channel. Everything here gets done with a sort of jaggedy, perfectly imperfect, vector-based art style. So what I'm gonna do first of all, I'm just gonna, because it's easier, I'm just gonna screenshot this. Oh, or is that gonna show up some stuff on the other screen here? Here's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna copy all this, and hopefully, let's tab on over to Flash. We got a brand new FLA file here. We'll just paste that. Oh, no, that's an old sitting pose that we didn't end up using, that we just copied out of another file. Alright, we'll just go ahead and here's what we'll do. Okay, that brings us over here. So, there we go. Copy that. Break that up. Okay. Unusual working with so many screens. You'll have to bear with me for a second here. Okay, back over to Flash then. Alright, and you can see we got just our little screenshot there. We're going to use this just for the purposes of scale. We're trying to make the scarf around the same size as the collar there. Because the thing that probably most people who work with Live2D don't run into is when you're exporting from vector-based programs like Flash or Illustrator, basically you've got infinite resolution that you can apply. You can scale it up as much as you want, infinitely, as a matter of fact, because it's all mathematically based, is how it's stored. Data-wise, that is. It's not raster-based like something in Paint or GIMP or Photoshop or any of those programs, traditional programs. How most digital art programs store data. But every little scratch, every little arc, every little tangent, every little line here, every fill, when you're working with vector graphics, is all completely mathematical. I'll show you what I mean here. Let's see. Bust out the tablet here. So even just a quick little swoop like this, you might notice that it gets sort of smoothed, and that's the computer trying to compensate for the fact that it has to, it can't create a one-to-one representation sometimes of what it is you're drawing, so it tries to smooth it out a little bit. But that's where some of the jank that we enjoy from the model comes. Alright, so what I'm gonna do here, we're just gonna turn that into a symbol we can use real quick so that we can apply a filter to it. Let's see. I want to color effect. Yeah, there we go. Alpha style. Drop that down a bit just so we can paint right over that. Start our sketching, and we'll just label this layer reference, lock that, make ourselves a new layer. We'll call this sketch, just so we don't lose track of what's what. And now when I'm doing just preliminary sketches, I just like to use a very bright, vibrant color. It doesn't interfere too much with my color blindness. Some of the viewers of the channel will know that that's an issue we've run into before with certain games and certain applications. Alright, so we want to make ourselves a festive sort of holiday scarf. So how's that going to look? First of all, I might want to widen this a little bit. And ooh, you know what? Because we went and plugged this in after the fact, this tablet in after the fact, we're not getting tablet properties. So hold on just one second. Let's just go ahead and save this as scarf. And then I'm going to close this down. And I'm going to reopen it. And now that the tablet's plugged in, that should give us everything that we need, all of our drawing options. And we're using quite an old version of Flash. This is the, or is it really old? I guess all Flash is old technically, but this might have been the last, one of the last commercial releases from the Creative Suite 6. All right, here we go. Yeah, there we go. Tablet options, okay. Put line smoothing on, and there we go. There, that's good. Okay. Lighten that up a bit. I'm thinking something I can see. There, that'll work. Okay. Let's rough ourselves out a scarf then, shall we? So basically this becomes the inner part of the scarf. And now we'll probably want to have it in 2 segments or so. Something like that. And it's good to keep these things in mind, especially if you're doing Live2D rigging yourself, is you want to know what are going to become solid pieces, essentially. Stuff that's going to move and turn with the character. Like, it's a very small detail. I don't know if anyone would usually pay attention to it, but all the little ruffles on our collar are individual pieces that move and distort depending on how our head tracking is working. And we're going to try to get a similar sort of effect with this scarf. And then we'll want to have something like a scarfy part coming over the top, something like that. That'll be its own part, and we'll probably want some little ruffles or something on the end there. There, that doesn't look too bad, conceptually. And then we'll want to have, you know what, we should aim to have a little more texture to it, something like that. Make it look like it's got folds and such. Yeah, something like that looks good. Alright. Then we'll have to choose colors and such later as well. So that's probably going to be 3 pieces. This top portion here that extends like this. Another piece underneath that'll move with the head as well when we actually start to rig it in Live2D. Let me just erase some detail here so you see what I mean about it'll extend out a little bit here, like that. Look like it's folding in on itself, sort of. And then the last part will be the actual hanging scarf portion itself, which will be covered up, a lot of this detail, same way with the collar. A lot of it will be covered up by the head itself. The Spaceman model technically has no neck, but because of the way that everything, all the other pieces are positioned, you never notice little things like that. Okay, so let's just lock that layer, and let's start working on our final model here. Easiest thing to do is going to be the long scarf portion first, so why don't we get started with that? We'll call it long layer. And you'll notice unusual compared to what a lot of people might be used to if they're using a Photoshop or something like that. We're technically selecting fills for our brushes instead of lines. And this all comes back to how vector data gets stored. Everything is a fill, technically. And it's all expressed mathematically. It's interesting stuff. It's why I've always been such a fan of it. Alright, we'll just quick save that. And let's get started on this. There we go. And when I'm doing the Spaceman style, which is, I think the best way to describe it is sort of a perfectly imperfect style. We do a lot of tracing and then a lot of erasing, trying to find that perfect sweet spot. Very Bob Ross, you know? Oh, we got some action in the chat. Monayu, OMG, it's a superstar artist in action. How are you doing tonight? You must have just finished up your stream. We were in there, idling for a little while before we got started. Seemed very busy. Tonight we're trying to make some holiday assets for the character. For the model, that is. Good, yeah, just finished. Nice. So we're working on a little Christmassy type scarf. Keep ourselves warm up here in deep space. You know we need something like that. And then if we get any extra time, we might try to do some mittens as well. Let's see what else we can add to the model. But hopefully we can get all the way from concept to Live2D rigging, and we might even see it live tonight if we got enough time. You know, I was surprised when I first got started in this whole independent streaming scene, as it were, how many people involved didn't do their own model work. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, or anything like that, or that people who can do it are superior or anything like that. I would never say that. Everybody's got their own style, everybody's got their own skills. But one of the barriers, I thought, before I ever started getting interested in live streaming or anything like that was, oh man, it seems like a lot of work. These are some very impressive people if they've got, you know, all these skills. Monty says, me, LOL, can't draw for my life. Well, that's fine. You got all these friends who give you such fun fan art and stuff, though, right? So that's what I mean. You don't have to be a particularly adept artist. And I certainly wouldn't even count myself among the perfectly adept. To find people who enjoy what you do and build a community of people who can help you along the way. That's real nice, isn't it? Monayu, indeed, I'm blessed. Yep, that's true. By the way, Monayu, we saw that 12 days of Twitter video that you did the other day. That was really cool. And we noticed you put our fan art entry in there as one of the days. That was real nice of you. Now, something we're gonna have to decide real quick is what color do we want this scarf to be? All thanks to Kohaku? Yeah, so she put together that, the instrumental, or she sourced it or something. That was real cool of her. I wonder if anybody else is gonna do a cover of it. That'd be fun. I'd love to do more sing-songy type content in the future. We're just so busy right now, unfortunately. So I'm thinking red and green seem like your classic Christmassy colors, right? Holiday type colors. So we may go with that. My big issue though has always been those are the two most serious colors that affect my color blindness. So combining them together, it always throws me off. Makes it hard to enjoy things like Christmas trees, any sort of seasonal, holiday seasonal, decorations and stuff like that. Indeed. Maybe a solid red would be okay, though. Or maybe we'll go for like a tartan type pattern. Yellow and red looks good? That's true. Let's add another layer here and see what a nice yellow might look like. Maybe if we were going stripy or something like that. Just conceptually, just sketching right now. Oh, that could look good. That could look good. Or let's just grab it all, everything on this layer, and let's see if there's a green that... Oh, you know what? That's not so bad. As soon as it gets too dark, though, that's where it starts to become an issue for me. Yeah, that looks nice, though. Something like that. So we'll add those sort of patterning effects after the fact. Don't know what else goes with yellow. When I think red and yellow, it always looks like a Harry Potter scarf or something like that. Alright, we'll keep that out of here for a sec. Let's work on the base model still first, though. This is going to have to be... And this is one of the things we have to start considering ahead of time. Yeah, less festive if too dark. Bright and vibrant, that's what we want. But this is something we have to consider as we're working, is that even little elements like shading need to be on their own layer, need to be their own separate entity. So right now, if we were to pull that out, we got a big gap here. We need to fill that in. Our first thing we need to do is X that out. We need to call this layer long detail, so we remember what it is. Paste that back in. Now we can just move it out of the way for a sec. Okay, this layer, fill that in. And now we can move that back into place. So that when we eventually export this all into Photoshop so that it can be loaded into Live2D, it'll all be on separate layers so that it can all move independent of each other. Alright, so we also want to make that just a little darker than the base color, because technically it's not a solid line, it's just shading. There we go. We might even brighten that up, but we'll hold on that for a second. Yeah, we do all our own rigging. We're entirely self-produced. Everything you see around here has been traced over, sketched over, or done wholesale by the Spaceman. So like I said, hopefully we'll get to show off the rigging process itself. A nice peek behind the curtain, as it were. Alright, so that is our... Whoops. We'll make a group here. We'll call it long. That's going to be our long portion, stick that up in there, and we'll just lock that and hide that for now. Monty says, I mean, I was already admiring you, but now you have ascended even more. Well, you gotta remember, the Spaceman model is not, you know, incredibly technically difficult or anything like that. It's why we're able to knock out all sorts of hand assets and stuff like the tablet and like the idle hands and the gamer hands and the singing hands and all that in a pretty short period of time. And so same goes for scarves. Even though this will move around like our neck portion does, or our collar and stuff, it'll move a little bit, but it won't have a super wide range of motion. But your ringing is super smooth, especially the mouth. Oh, especially the mouth, really? I think that comes down to more settings within the facial tracking program, more so than anything else. I think it's really only something like 16 different mouth frames that it gets tweened between, so motion betweening, which is stuff that we're all super familiar with from our days working in Flash as Flash and not just as a vector program for importing art into other programs. Now you got the mouth shapes looking great. The one thing that we don't have, and it's because of the way we had to set up the facial tracking, is we can't do a solid smile. Like if I just grit my teeth, like there should be a bottom portion of the teeth that'll come up, and sometimes you can see it on certain frames once in a blue moon, but for the most part we just see the top row of teeth. And I've definitely drawn a smiling mouth frame for it, so why it doesn't show up, it just all comes down to trying to get the best, most fluid looking motion between the mouth frames, and that one just we can never pull it off. Oh, same with your mouth movement. So maybe it is something to do with the tracking program. We're using, what do we use here? That is VTube Studio, the free to use facial tracking Live2D program. I know there's one or two others. I've heard of PRPR Live, and there could be some other ones, but I found this one works really well. Alright, let's get working on the next portion, which is going to be this swoop here. So we need a new layer, and this is going to be under the long section, technically. We'll call this one Big, because it's the biggest one. And let's get sketching. And we want it to sort of fold over the other part, so. And remember, it's all about getting big, thick lines that'll eventually get toned back. You can see the thickness of all the other Spaceman lines. We want to try to match that. Let's see, can we... maybe not. Might have to pull it back a little more. Okay, that's not so bad. Yeah, we want it to look like it's sort of tucking under the other part here. Clean some of this up. Perfectly imperfect. We want it to look like it's got a certain amount of jank to it, because of course that's the mid-2000s internet aesthetic that we're striving for. That's when we started using Flash, back during its heyday. Monayu, I don't know if you were in the game stream we were doing last night, but we absolutely burned through the Fancy Pants adventures way quicker than I thought. Originally, I had planned to do that back-to-back, yesterday and tonight. I had to find something to do, since we completely speed ran it. So I thought, why not do something I've been meaning to do for a while, which was do a little art on stream. Already done, yeah, so I looked it up afterwards, and apparently it's got an average completion time of like 2 hours. So we could have got it done just in the first stream that we had done the other week, if we had been really, you know, if we hadn't been dying so much and meandering and looking for challenges and stuff like that. You know, very much in line with the original Flash games. They were always pretty short as well. When I picked up the game, it was only like 10 bucks on the Steam store. I thought, oh, it must be because, you know, it's been out for a few years. But no, for a game that short, that's, yeah, that's pretty fair, price-wise. Alright, and we'll want a little... Ooh, I like the way that looks. Lol indeed. But there's still a bunch of unlockables that I haven't gotten for it, so I'm sure I'll go back to it off stream, have some more fun with it. It is such a killer game. Even if it is a little short. I think I just want one big swoop coming across the whole thing. I know what's bugging me. This is bugging me. I want that to fold over the other way. There we go. Even the hardware we're using tonight is pretty old school. We're using a Wacom Intuos 4, which I think I bought between 5 and 10 years ago, and it was like $500 at the time. It was top of the line stuff. Now, of course, you got tablets that you can draw right on. They got screens on them. $10 for nostalgia and fun? Why not? Why not, indeed? I mean, that's nothing. 2 hours of my time, that's worth 10 bucks. And more. I want to give this a little sharp edge. There we go. Clean up this part, even though it's going to get covered by the long portion. This is supposed to be detail work, so... Sometimes I get real precise about it, real finicky. Even over small details. Alright, that doesn't look bad. The top portion. Good, good. I want to round that out a bit. Oop, a little too much. Okay, let's fill that in. First thing we got to do is create a big detail layer. Transfer this part over. And we really should be... Here's what we'll do. We'll keep a palette. What is this? Save changes. No thank you. Just gonna leave ourselves a little color palette over here so we can pick stuff that's off screen. Whoop. Okay. Big portion detail, we want to color you in that color, very good. And then on big, we want to color the inside standard red, okay. And how do those two look together? Pretty good, pretty good. Might add a little more detailing with some sort of like texture. We'll see, we'll see. All right, time for the little part. Before we do, we'll make ourselves another folder here to store all that stuff. It's real easy to lose track of all your different parts. We'll call the next one small. Liking it already, Manu? Well, we'll like it even more once it's in motion, I'm sure. I think I know what's bugging me about this portion, but we'll come back to it. Okay, so for the small part, we actually want to build in here a little more than our sketch would indicate, and this is because when it's moving, these parts are going to twist and deform, and they're going to fold over one another. So we want to give ourselves some breathing room, as it were. Even though it won't get seen most of the time. That's all stuff you gotta take into consideration. And it's lessons you learn pretty fast. Technically, though, the Spaceman model was the very first live 2D model I ever did. I gave myself about a month before I started streaming to learn how to use software like OBS and Live2D. Of course, I already had Flash down pat, Illustrator, Photoshop, all that stuff, all the artistic side of it down. Just getting it all to move and contort and flow. That was a learning process. Made a lot of mistakes, but I think I got a lot out of it. Pro moves. Let me know if we're getting a lot of lag tonight. I keep seeing some dropped frames spiking out of the corner of my eye. If it gets too bad, let me know. Yeah, that's what I need on the other side, is this. A more prominent fold. That's what we don't have on the big portion. We got a little one. But when we put in the long portion, I'd like to have just a little more. We'll go back to that. Hasn't frozen for you at all? Okay, that's good. Let's hope we can keep it that way. Alright, so everything else here is going to be covered up, so we don't even need a detail layer for it. So when it all comes together, it looks like that. A nice little spaceman scarf. Might have to thin out some of these lines, but it's all pretty close to the other aspects of it. I'll show you how detailed we have to get for some of the major elements of it. Hold on a sec here. Uh-oh. There we go. Flash, for some reason, it always spooks me. it'll stop responding when I save sometimes. And I have to just hope that it can get everything written to the disk before we get some sort of crash. But let's see here. Spaceman Vector. Is this the right one? That's the right one. So here you can see all the different parts that go into a completed Spaceman model. So we've got all the different helmet pieces, all the different highlights and shadows that go onto the helmet. The ears, the jaggedies on the ears. I think the most technically challenging part of the model was the ears themselves on the headphones. Simulating that 3D movement, because you can see when we go side to side like this, that it actually looks like the head is turning. You can see the caps, or what would be the caps on the side of that, which is all just a trick of motion, really. That's how the Live2D software works. It's the same sort of tricks that we were actually pulling off with Flash back in the day. Back in the mid-2000s, when we'd do facial animation, basically you'd have a... Let me show you what we'd do, basically. Basically, you would have a head layer, like this, or looks pretty rough, but oh, that's why. I lost the tracking on the pad. There we go. Let's say you had a front-facing head or something like that. Then on a separate layer you would have stuff like ears and noses and what have you. So let's say we've got ears here. And those ears would be behind the solid fill of the head, so you wouldn't see them all the time. And then you'd have noses and stuff like that. And you would move that stuff at a rate that made it look like the whole head was rotating, basically. It's what they call parallax motion or something like that. You know, the same reason that you're looking at a car window or something way in the distance looks like it's moving real slower. It's all an optical illusion to sort of simulate motion or depth. And that's basically the same technique that's used for all Live2D models. So the headphones were the most challenging part of that, and really not even that challenging. All we had to do was just sort of flatten them out as the head moves side to side, and then hide them, then bring them back in when they move the other way. But small details like each individual part of the collar being its own layer, and you don't really notice that until you start looking for it, but it's all what helps the final model come together and look a little more smooth. Actually, here's one thing that didn't make it into the final model, was we had originally wanted to do hands with individual fingers that could be moved and rotated and what have you, to make gestures and things like that. Ultimately, we ended up just going with solid hands that just move slightly from side to side. You don't notice it too much, thankfully, because most of the time you're not looking at the hands. It was a bit overkill to try and get the fully articulated hands. Though, saying that, now that's been the latest release with Live2D, is the ability to track hands. It would be a lot of work, that's the thing. Each individual finger, then shading on each individual finger, and then doing it all again if we wanted to do different hand positions. So it's a lot easier with what we ended up with in the end, which is just static hands. Hands for gaming, hands for idle, hands for... You never really see the pointing finger that's hidden behind the tablet, but that's what's there. And then, of course, the gripping hand for holding objects like the microphone. So... I think first of all, we are going to need a little bit of shading on the small portion, now that I see it all together. Just a tiny bit, though. Just to make ourselves a new layer. Whoops. Thinking just a little bit of action underneath here. Oh, whoa. Gotta lock that other layer so we're not deleting everything here. There we go. Let's see how that looks. I know what's the matter here. I want there to be some poking out from underneath the fold. There we go. Simulate it laying on top there. Most of that'll be hidden. But it's stuff that your brain will notice. The human eye is really good for picking up what should look natural. Even if you've got no real artistic sense yourself, your brain recognizes these things. Even the layman connoisseur will notice this in motion once it's all put together. And actually, I should do the same thing for the top of the big piece as well. Mani says I was dumb and spilled some candle wax on my mouse pad so I won't be typing a little bit. Oh, geez. That's what you get. That's what you get for being festive. Oh, was it a festive candle or just a regular old everyday candle? Maybe that's the question. Now I'm seeing stuff that I want to add to the other pieces too. Lock that, open up the long one. I've got some friends back home who are huge candle fans when it gets around Christmas times. Everything up a bit. Just see how it sits. It'll probably wind up, yeah, about there. I just realized. Here I am asking Manu questions, and she just told me. Probably not going to be typing for a bit. Let's just take a look here. Oh, we've got a few people watching the stream tonight. That's nice. I never want to pressure anyone to stop in and say hello, but we always appreciate it when they do. And remember, we're trying our best to get to our next follower goal for the month, so that we can bring some exciting new engagement options to the channel. Okay, show me the big portion here. And will this be a detail part or part of the base model? I think technically detail, but it's gonna move in time with the rest of the, well, no, we'll put it on the detail layer just in case we decide we want to warp it independently. Give me that dark color, and we're gonna make, let's hide the long portion. We're gonna darken up the top here, which is gonna be representative of the head casting shadow onto the scarf itself. Art theory, people. Gotta know your light sources. Okay. Now really that's not thick enough, but we're not gonna see it that often. So instead what we'll do is we'll just move this down a bit so maybe we see it every now and then. Oh, and hey, you know what? That's good, because if we move it like here, then we can expand some of the folds on this side, which I would like to do. Yes, yes. All coming together. Now, if we were really ambitious, what we would have done, we would have made this section up here basically its own layer, this one underneath its own layer. We would have turned the folds themselves into their own layers. But we're not going to be using the scarf too often. It's really just going to be a holidays type thing. Let's add a little more detail underneath that fold like we have on the other side. Just a wee bit there. And the last thing I think we'll do with this piece, I think we actually need to thin out some of this. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. Which means we're gonna have to clean up the smaller piece a little bit. Oh, geez. Manu says, I'm back. There was some on my phone and all over my hand, too. Geez, Louise. Talk about a crisis. Well, I think we're getting very close to having a workable scarf. Turn off that big one so I can see underneath. Basically, we want all of this to be covered up, just for safety's sake. I have a healthy obsession with candles, so I always have vanilla and green apple ones laying around. Those are some good flavors, though. Flavors. I shouldn't say flavors when I'm talking about candles. Don't eat candles, people. Scents. Good scents. Vanilla betrayed me today. We used to always have scented candles around the house around Christmas times, and they'd always be stuff like, you could never really tell what the actual scents were, because they'd be named stuff like Jack Frost or Snowstorm or stuff like that. It's like, whatever company was making these was real big into making it all thematic. They smelt nice enough though, but wasn't really 100% sure what I was smelling. Whoops. Well, yeah. Okay, let's make everything visible again. Let's turn our reference image back up to full opacity so we can sort of compare it. Turn off the sketch layer. Fairly comparable. I think maybe a bit, it looks a bit thick, some of the line work, and I think that's because the dark red and the black blend together just a little bit, making it seem thicker than it is in some parts. So I'll just do a quick pass, thinning out some of it, some of the line work. But then I think we should be good to move on to the next stage. Oh, but we got to decide if we want to make it partly green as well. And if we're going to do that, it'll basically just be select spots where the dark red doesn't overlap. Because then otherwise we have to alter the shadow layers as well. Yeah, well, here's the workflow. So we start in Flash, we get all of our greebly, sketchety, scraggly line work out of the way. Then that gets exported into Adobe Illustrator, which then gets exported into Photoshop, which then gets exported into Live2D. For whatever reason, and I'm not sure why, because they were all part of the same Creative Suite software, Flash can't export directly into Photoshop. You have to export the vector work into Illustrator, which is a dedicated vector artwork program. So technically Flash deals in vector artwork. That's how it stores all of its line data, because it makes it incredibly lightweight, and that's why it was so popular to use as an internet medium. It took less data to transfer, so that's why you could, you know, do stuff like games and animation and stuff right in your browser. But it's not technically a artwork program on its own. Illustrator, however, is. And they're both vector-based software. So you export the line work from Flash into Illustrator, and then Illustrator is able to export in a different file format into Photoshop. If we want to keep the fidelity of the line work, and that's the great thing about vector work, is that you can zoom in basically as much as you want. 800%, 2000%, how about 8000%? Oh, I guess 2000's the max, but point is you could keep zooming in infinitely. You'd keep the exact same detail because it's all stored as a series of arcs and tangents. It's all mathematical, not you know, just bitmaps or raster-based information. So if we want to keep all of that detail, then we got to export to Illustrator, which can then export into Photoshop. So that's the process, and then Photoshop is the preferred software for importing into Live2D. That's always been standard. Alright, so let's do a little bit of quick thinning. The eraser tool here. Just shaving off small amounts, and not everywhere either. Oh, and make sure that it's not locked. was always one of the things that I strove to make sure we had down pat when I was preparing the channel, was everything has to look uniform in terms of aesthetic. So some of the background elements from the channel, like if we switch back over to the station scene, obviously not the rotating Earth in the background, that's a whole other thing, but the line work on the computers, the chair there, the consoles, the walls, all that. So I should say 99% of the stuff on the channel was made by us, but some of the stuff like this backdrop here, this sort of space station backdrop, was actually purchased from another vector stock image resource, and then traced over to make sure that it had the same janky look as the rest of the model. So we still had to put some work in to make sure it all looked uniform, but yeah, technically some of it we did have some a little bit of help on, just because it saved us a lot of time. We could have done something similar, but for what it cost, it was just a lot better to shell out a few bucks and then add our own touch onto it. Now what are we sitting at here? We're about an hour into the stream. We're making some pretty good time. No, that's too much. The Live2D rigging for a lot of assets, for whole models, yeah, it would take a while to do, but for something as simple as this scarf, I don't imagine it's going to take us a super long time. And we'll get to see the whole process of how we add these variable objects like scarves and hand positions and things like that. It can be interesting to people who are unfamiliar or interested in this sort of thing. Okay, show me... Yeah, that one has to be thinned out, definitely. Technically, we're not erasing here. Oh, but I guess we could. Yeah, we'll just erase on the outside. Time does equal money, that's true. That was the main reason. So thankfully, we found a really good resource for vector artwork, which of course is all about scalability. That's why we decided we needed it. Where each image costs like $1 or something, and at that point it's like you're just wasting your time if you try to recreate it solo. Talk about a steal. Alright, show me the whole thing here. Big, small, long piece. Could use a little work. I like the jankiness down here, though. I don't think I'll change that. It's just this long strip here, I think, needs a little bit of work. And so we're actually just going to paint over it, because technically there's no differentiation between line works and fills when you're working in vectors. It's all math. And while we're here, I think we've got to thicken out this detail line as well. Just to be a little more like the others that we got going. We can have it sort of taper off at the end there. That's fine. Or do we want to do... Is that too much? Yeah, that's what we want. Hold on. We want to have it sort of arc along with the scarf. So there we go. Kind of like an S. Very subtle. And then it can do that. Okay. Do we need something like that up here, though? Yeah, we do. We definitely do. Again, stuff that your brain notices. It'll probably cover up most of that, but if it ever does become visible... Whoa! We'll know why it looks so decent. Because we spent the time on it that we needed. Getting Spaceman style. Now, most of the time when I'm doing this kind of work, I'll be watching other people's streams or something on YouTube, stuff like that. Now I gotta talk to myself like some kind of crazy person. Well, at least we got some holiday tunes. We got some good company in the chat. In here. Streamer light, indeed. Let's see, do I need shading all along the side here? Is that why? No, not that side though, is it? Technically, you might want it over here. Yes, yes, yes. This is what we've been missing. The illusion of depth. No wonder this one was bugging me. We got a few too many scragglies in here. Now it's getting close. You know, it's been a real long time since I've done any actual animation, but that's something I'd really like to get back into as well. And I'm sure it's something that we could do here on the channel. Well, I guess technically we did a little bit of it when we were doing, playing some Gartic Phone on, I think it was Monayu's stream. But we actually used to be involved in the animation scene over on sites like Newgrounds and Flash Player and things like that. Nothing terribly impressive. All stuff that's lost to time by now, but It's what got us interested in Flash in the first place. If we were enterprising, we could have done something like our own little holiday special. That would have been fun. Maybe next year. Okay, now I want to add a second fold here. I'm gonna commit it to its own layer though, so we don't lose track of it. That way, when we take it over to Live2D, we'll be able to move them independently of one another and further add to that illusion of motion. That one. Alright, that'll do us, I think. Thicken that out. Okay. Just clean this bottom part up a bit, since it's going to be hanging down there. Yeah, okay. Let's show me the whole thing here. Let's zoom out a bit. That, I think we can call that a finished scarf. Only took us about an hour. How about that? Alright, so now comes the fun part. We got to separate everything out so that it can be properly exported, so that it can be re-imported, so that it can be arranged properly, so that it can be brought into Live2D. So here's how we do that. So you remember what I was showing you before with the completely exploded Spaceman model. So everything on the model here, even down to little highlights on the zipper, things like that, all become their own model. So they all have to be separated so that we can reconstruct it in Photoshop. So here's what we do. Turn off everything that we don't need. We turn on everything that we do need. Bring them over here, onto the stage. It's a lot of work for a full model, but I don't think anybody's super surprised by that, are they? That's why some people get paid the big bucks. So we want the long base to be its own thing. We want long details to be its own thing. We want the secondary detail to be its own thing. This is just so that we can identify it when we're reconstructing it all. Okay, big piece. Let's move you up here. And all your details. Get you nearby. This piece here. We may separate that on its own. In fact, we may separate all of these elements. Whoop. Just give them enough space from one another so that we can highlight and lasso and select them properly. No, you get back where you belong, sir. And then the only thing we have to separate here is that one detail piece. Okay. Let's save that. And now what do we have to do? We have to export our image. And we'll put that in our media file. And that gets exported as an Adobe FXG file, which Illustrator can read. And we'll call that scarf. Okie doke. Now we can pop on over into Illustrator. Where are you, Illustrator? There we are, just showing off more of the Spaceman explosion. Close that down and we'll open up the file that we just made called Scarf. Where are you? There we go. Okay, so there's all our parts. And now we have to export that, or no, we have to save that as a different file. We have to save that as an Illustrator EPS file. And the problem is that we can't save it as this specific file type in Flash. So that's why we have to go through Illustrator, because Illustrator is more of a dedicated illustration program, hence the name. And Illustrator is the program that you would use if you were dedicated to actual vector artwork. Okie doke. That writes. Perfect. Now we can pop on over to Photoshop again, where we were before, where we got our reference photo from. And I am going to keep this here for a second because we want to scale this properly. Here's the problem. We want to open up that EPS file that we just made. And when we do that, it's going to ask us, how big do you want it? Essentially, what we're doing is we're rasterizing the vector, which is to commit it to a fixed size. So Photoshop is a raster-based program. It doesn't handle vectors. We can't zoom in infinitely like we can in Flash and Illustrator. It wants to set it at a fixed size. So we have to decide how big we want it. Now I'm pretty sure that we use a 4000 by 4000 pixel canvas for the model in Live2D. So what we're going to do here, we're just going to give it 2000 pixel width. So as you can see, we're viewing it at 66. So there's 100% view. That's if we were viewing it as big as it is, or as big as it wants to be. Oh, son of a gun. I'm asking myself, why do these colors look a little off? That's because it always wants to default to CMYK color, that is cyan, magenta, yellow, and key being black, whereas we want RGB color, but now the colors are off, so can we change that in Illustrator so that the reds stay as nice and red as they were before? Yeah, we want to replace that, thank you. Where can we choose? I want that. Type, no. Object, no, no. Edit colors, here we go. No. Color settings, here we go. Maybe on the import. Let's try that again. Doing a little dance, Monayu? We're trying our best here. Let's see. There it is. We want it to come in RBG color. There we go, and so that should keep, yeah, the same reds that we originally designed it as. Okay, so we want to select all of this, and we're going to paste it right in here, just for the moment. Or you know what we're going to do? We're going to create a new file, and we're going to make it 2000 by 2000. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to flatten everything in here just for a second so we can copy our what would you call it? Reference, basically. Then we'll undo that because we don't want to lose all of those wonderful folders that we have there. Save that for good measure. Oh, no, hold on. There we go. Now we can save it for good measure. Put that head back where it belongs. Now we will import all of these scarf assets, and now we will scale it down to actually fit the size that we want. So thankfully we have this reference here over top of the collar. Yeah, that should be good. So we want it to be a little wider than the collar itself. Very, very good, very good. And now, let us start assembling. So everything in here has to become its own Photoshop layer, essentially. And if we want to be real good about it, then we'll want to rename them all specifically and all that so that it shows up and it's easy to read in Live2D. So let's get started with that. Just use the lasso tool to freeform around those, cut them out, paste them back in. That becomes its own layer. We'll call that small. We'll try to go through this as quick as we can, but this is the process for everything essentially. Cut that out. That becomes big. And we're going to go ahead and make groups for it as well, just to make our job easier. Big, small, and long. I guess we didn't get around to doing multicolored scarf, but we'll see how we like just the flat colors. We can always go back and change it later in the off stream. I think it's interesting just to be able to show all this off in one stream from start to finish. It's a unique concept for a stream. Or at least for the kind of stuff that we do. Small goes in small, big goes in big. Why did I name both of them small? Long, that's what we want. And long goes over top of everything. There we go. Big goes over top of small. Perfect. So that fits snugly right in there. We like that. Now let's start separating out these assets. Too long. And we park you right around here or so. But this is why we separate it all out. So when I'm turning my head from side to side, this part of the model will move along with it. Other parts of the model will deform as it moves. We'll get that simulated sense of motion. What do we call this? Small detail. Whoop. Hey now. There we go. Why are you doing that? Because we have auto select on? snugly in there and you'll warp on your own. Perfect. This we will call Big Detail Top. Come on, there we go. There, that's what we need. We had it selected as group. Next up, Big Detail Mid. If anybody needs to go get themselves a nice drink or a snack or take a small break, now would be a good time to do it. This process will go on for a few minutes, just as we reconstruct our model in individual layers. Big detail side. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like more to go. Call this long detail thin. No, long detail shadow. That's what it is. So this is what rests on the side here. Tuck that right over the line work. Very good. Long detail thick. Sit right about there. And one thing that I've really appreciated about adopting this sketchy, janky style of modeling for Spaceman is it allows me to not worry about a lot of the imperfections, and in fact, start to appreciate a lot of them. Long detail thin. Sit right about there. Where'd you go? There we are. Long detail top right. And finally, we can just rename that. Long detail top left. That up where it belongs. Beauty. Now that looks like a scarf, fit for a spaceman, if I do say so myself. Let's delete our reference layer. Now for the fun part. So we're going to save this as Photoshop file, and we will call this scarf export. So this gets saved as a Photoshop PSD file. Oh, and you know what? We actually want to get rid of the background layer. Take that right out so we've got nothing but transparency, because we don't want the background layer getting imported into Live2D as well. All right, Are we ready to jump over to Live2D then? Let's take a look behind the curtain. Let's see all the technical sausage making that goes on behind the channel. Let's see, here we go. So here we are in Live2D, and here we have a spaceman. And technically we can position him however we want using the controls here. So we've got this about 30-degree range of motion on any side. Just reset that to defaults. And the way that we control additive elements like hand positioning and tablets and things like that is through the use of these parameters here. So here you can see the mouth forms. We can control all of that. We got sad mouths. Some of these that, just because of the way that the facial tracking works, we rarely ever see. Like, I think the maddest we can make us look is like... No, can't even do it. I'd have to recalibrate it. It always looks like we're smiling when we're on stream, which is fine. I don't think we've ever had an instance where we've been legitimately upset, so that's fine. But where is it? Oh, big smiles, and yeah, there's smiley vector, which is again is another mouth form that we rarely see, just because of the way the facial tracking works. But that all tweens between different positions. That's great stuff. But then we have all of these custom parameters here, like... Actually, I think we have some extra ones. We have angry eyes that we can put on. We've got sad eyes that we can activate if we had to. Then, of course, we've got the tablet, the gamepad, the microphone, and really all that's being controlled here is we're toggling the transparency of certain layers. So, for example, when we move from idle hands to microphone, we're not even changing the one side of the body. That stays completely the same. All we're doing is flipping one of the arms from the outer to the inner style. And technically, you'll notice those are different assets. The outer arm, the shading is slightly different from the inner arm, so as to give the illusion of actual motion. But for the most part, it's just flipping assets around. And sometimes, like for example, when we're making custom images for stream titles and things like that, we activate the talking head mode, which just takes everything else but the head off so that we can Photoshop that into different scenes, which is very useful. And really all we're doing there is just setting the opacity of everything else to 0. So what we're going to be doing when we import the scarf, we're going to be making it into its own parameter, which we can activate or deactivate at will. And that is going to allow us to hide it or show it. And when we show the scarf, we're going to hide the collar elements, because we don't want them clipping through one another. Alright, so how do we do that? First of all, we want to find where we store the collar parts. Here we go. Body, collar. So we're going to want to make a new folder over top of collar. And we're going to call it scarf. And one thing I recommend to everyone who does their own rigging and modeling and everything like that is make sure A, you've got all your files organized in a way that you can find easily, but B, that you've got them backed up in a number of locations. So all the work that went into making even something as simple as Spaceman, if we were to lose it, oof, we'd be distraught. We'd be more than distraught. So what we do here now, we're going to just open up our file browser off screen here, and we're going to navigate to where we saved that Photoshop file that we just finished with the scarf. And all we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop it right into Live2D, and it's going to do a lot of the work for us. So we're going to drag that in here, and it's going to give us some options here. We can either create a new model, which is what we'd be doing if we were dropping in the base Spaceman for the first time, but right here we want to add it to the existing model. Add all layers as new art mesh. Yep. Okay, now where did that get saved to? Scarf export. All right. Now it may be the case that these are hidden behind the body. Let's see where these are at. Here we go. Oh, there they are. So we're going to select all of this. Oh, first thing we're going to do, we're going to make sure all of our default values are set. Because here's the thing, when we start animating the motion of different parts of the body, all of these keyframes, essentially, we can show, break it down, just X movement, Y movement, stuff like that. Those all correspond to different, what are called warp deformers here. So for example, idle hands. It's got keyframes along here that if we get to the actual one. Where are you, hands? There we go, hands export. It's got a number of distinct keyframes, which means that wherever we introduce a new parameter to these hands, they try to tween between where they remember being and where they're set as being on a particular keyframe. So if we were to introduce a new keyframe along the way, for whatever reason, just having the basic motion here is good enough, but if we were to introduce a new parameter with new keyframes in between, it could try to maybe have a semi-transparent opacity, if that's what we were trying to mess with, or it might start moving all around the place on its own because we didn't properly set up its final positioning. So that's why we will always want to start with default values here. So everything is completely front-facing. It's how things look. Basically, as we load it into VTube Studio or any other facial tracking program. Alright, so that stays scaled the way that we want it, so that's good. What we need to do, though, we need to create a texture atlas for these pieces. So here's what that looks like. Here's the texture atlas for the Spaceman head, for the Spaceman body. And we'll just go and we'll add these onto the body atlas. And what this does is this creates a mesh, basically, a 3D deformable mesh around all of these pieces that'll allow us to tweak and warp and change the way that it looks through the use of those mesh deformers, which is how we control all of our different parameter states. So what we want to do is we just want to make sure that these are not touching any of the other ones. Because if we have any overlap, then it will basically draw them on top of each other, and we don't want that. And you'll notice that the mesh for these ones that we've just imported are basically just squares. These are not fleshed out like these ones. We still haven't gotten to that point yet. Now we can do those manually, or we can have it approximate it automatically, since what we imported was on a transparent background. That's very good. All right, let's... Good. Hold on. Oh. The OK is hidden down there. There we go. Alright, so it updates the texture atlas, which should look familiar to anybody who's got any experience with UV mapping for 3D modeling. It's basically the same process. Now we want to automatically generate mesh for these pieces. And we'll just do a standard deformation. Now you can see that got quite a bit more complex. And now if we go back into the texture atlas, we should see, yep, many more points of deformation on these. And that's about all we're going to need, because we don't need it to be too detailed. But I will say on pieces like the mouth, that's when we use very heavy deformation, because those are the pieces where we tend to be making very, very minute changes. Very specific warps. So compared to something like the, you know, the arm on the microphone on the side of the head, which doesn't move a whole lot, yeah, the mouth needs a lot more fidelity, a lot more detail. And we'll just close that out. Okay. Now let's start placing this scarf. So, we need to arrange our scarf. First thing we're going to do is create a parent warp deformer. We're just going to call this scarf parent. And so that contains all of our pieces, and we're going to make sub deformations as well as we continue. But we want to place that scarf in the hierarchy here, just over top of the collar. And unfortunately, these are not the best named pieces, these hierarchies here. This is all a holdover from my very first attempt at making the Spaceman model. So it's a little cluttered, but at least we can still navigate it. Alright, so it's on the same layer as the scarf. First thing we should do now, why is it showing up above the head pieces? Because of what is called, where is it here? There's some sort of draw order field. Where am I looking for? Oh, no. Maybe because, yeah, we have to move it down in this hierarchy. This is the one that actually controls draw order. Let's see. So right above the, right, we want to put it all into scarf there. Right in scarf, and that should allow us oh no, maybe I was wrong. Everything's still, except for the hands. Why is that? This is where we control draw order. Okay. It's been a while since we had to add a piece that wasn't hands. So the head, base visor, so these are all drawing at 300, so we just want something less than that, but more than the body. These are drawing at 200, so we'll set the scarf to draw at 250. Okay, it's behind the helmet, but not behind the head. Where are we storing the head here? Face. Yeah, okay, that's face. Face is drawing at 300. So what's the deal, mate? Something's up here. Something is up here and I wish I knew why. Fine. Oh, all the individual pieces. Okay, so we're setting the group as 250, but all the individual pieces are still drawing at 500. So we just need to select those and tone them down a bit. Very strange hierarchy system. I wish we could just order it sort of top down like layers. Okay, now it's sitting like we want. That's a good looking scarf. And we want the zipper to still swing back and forth, so we'll just want to move it up a little bit. So it'll sit right about there. And that'll give us room to move it around when we're looking up and down as well. That's a decent scarf right there. That looks like the kind of thing we could wear all the time. That doesn't even look too holiday-esque. We'll either have to go back and add some Christmassy detailing, or we'll have to keep adding on to the model. Some mittens or something. What's some other stuff we could add? I was thinking about doing a hat, but I don't know how we'd fit it over top of the helmet. Okay, so time to start with parameters. So, right now the scarf parent group has no assigned parameters. Snowflakes? Oh yeah, that would be good. And that would be really easy to add too, since we wouldn't have to have it conflict with the shading. We'll add those later though. We'll try to get a working scarf for tonight. We're almost 2 hours in. Alright, so here's what we do. First thing we want to do, we want to keep the talking head parameter working. So we're going to assign the talking head parameter to scarf parent. We put one keyframe at 0, one keyframe at 1. That's what controls it. So when it's at 0, opacity is at 100%. We're allowed to see it. When it is at 1, okay, it automatically goes to hidden because scarf parent is not part of head isolate, or is part of head isolate. Alright, so I'd already worked that out in the past then. I figured out a way to get that to work without having to assign every single little thing. Alright, but what we're going to do then is we're going to create a new parameter, and we are going to call that parameter scarf. And the data on that is going to range, or the keyframes on that is going to range from 0 to 1. And so this is something that's only going to be assigned to the scarf parent layer, or warp deformer. So we assign a keyframe at 1, a keyframe at 0. When scarf is at 0, which should be most of the time, then that parent group is going to have an opacity of 0. And when scarf is at 1, it's going to have an opacity of 100, so when we flick scarf on as a parameter in Live2D, or in our VTube Studio program, then it's going to show the scarf and everything else that goes with it. So that's how that works. one thing that I'd recommend to anybody who is thinking about getting into Live2D rigging or doing some of your own model work, adding on assets and stuff like that, know how these parameters work, know how the warp deform groups work, because you don't want to basically set up your model as you want it to look and then realize that you've completely messed up the hierarchy or messed up the orientation or the keyframing. Start small. Learn lessons, as I had to do. You know, I made so many mistakes in the early parts of working on the Spaceman model, where I'd be, you know, rigging the head movement. We'd get it looking real nice with the angles and stuff, only to then go and add something like the arms or the body, and basically have to start from scratch, because as soon as I started moving this around, it would tweak everything out of order. So now default values, when we reset to default values, that sets Scarf to 0. Just like it does with the talking head, the microphone, the gamepad, the tablet, all of that stuff. Let's go ahead and turn Scarf on. And now every other keyframe that we make at this point, when it comes to animation and any other thing we're doing here, is under the assumption that Scarf is turned on. So let us create subgroups out of this Scarf parent warp deformer. So long gets a group. We'll select all of those pieces, and this is why we name everything properly beforehand, so that we can find everything we need. And we're going to create a warp deformer, and we're going to call it long group. Or we may as well call it long parent, just to keep going with the naming conventions we're setting for ourselves. So now Scarf parent, long parent is a child of Scarf parent. We'll do the same for the big pieces. We'll call this one big parent. And small parent. Even though it's only got 2 pieces, they are going to move together sometimes. So there we go. We've got those 3 subgroups within. And then, what's going to move here? So within the long group, the detail pieces are going to move. The thin and thick pieces are going to move together sometimes. So we'll call that detail mid. And then I think the other pieces are going to move independently. The other detail pieces, that is. Oh, and the long piece might move on its own. So we go ahead and we give each of those their own independent layers, or warp deformers, I should say. And these aren't getting named very well, but for expediency's sake, because we kind of know what we're doing here, we'll just let it auto-name them. Whoops. He said as he assigned the wrong layer. Okay, same goes for the big pieces. These each get their own layers, their own warp deformers, to use the proper nomenclature. So this is where all the technical stuff comes into play. I don't think small is going to move on its own, so Oh, but it might though. Yeah, it kind of will, so. Better safe than sorry. Okay, everything's got its own warp deformer, as it should be. They're all grouped properly. We'll just save that for security's sake. Now, the first thing that I like to do, you'll notice if we're just sitting completely still, if we're not doing anything here, we'll turn off the tablet here. You'll notice that there is a little bit of movement to the model. The zipper sways a bit. The arms bob just a little bit. Everything except the head, really, because you don't want that moving on its own. That can screw up a lot of stuff. Even the legs, you can't really see them. If we stretch up... No, you can't really see them here, but if we were to switch back to the station view, you'd see that they sort of sway a little bit from side to side, even when we're not moving. So there is a sort of breath animation, a breathing animation that we have for all of our pieces. And so we're going to assign that to the scarf as well. So that's breath here. And now which pieces do we want to keep moving? Manu says I'm quiet but still watching. Well, I'm glad you're sticking around. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Manu. So we want to get the scarf to move a little bit, just a little bit, in our default animation. So we're going to select the long piece, the long parent, that whole group. And we'll add it to the breath parameter. So right now it's at 0. We slide that on over to 1, and you can see when we move this back and forth that the body moves a little bit, it sways a bit. That's what we want to apply, that sort of subtle motion to the scarf. And really all we're going to do for that, we're going to set it to 1. And we are going to select the long parent group, and we're just going to rotate it and reposition it ever so slightly. And what the breath animation does is it tweens between these two, back and forth. So we get a subtle sort of swaying action there. And I think we've come down a bit too far with it. So we make tweaks here until it looks like it's sort of orbiting or rotating right on one spot. Thankfully, we're no stranger to motion tweening, because it was a big part of animating in Flash as well. You could do keyframing animation, sure, but just for the sake of your sanity and the expediency of your production, we made use of a lot of motion tweening. Alright, and I think we're also going to want to get the details to move a little bit on that breath motion. So let's select these two, the thin and thick details, and we'll add them to the breath parameter. So breath parameter comes in, and what I'm thinking is we're going to get this piece here. And this is where that mesh comes into play. So now we can deform that. And oh, look at this. We just stretch it over here a little bit. Put it back, it goes back. So we get a little bit, almost looks like traditional 2D animation, but really we're just using mathematics to cheat the system. We'll do the same thing to the long portion. We want it to stretch out here a little bit. That doesn't look as good as I'd like because we want this to come up a bit. I think we're overextending the thin piece. I think we're overextending both of them. A lot of little tweaks that end up getting made. We just want to thicken it, maybe. Remember, the breath animation is just meant to be real subtle. The major motion is going to come from the X and Y body tracking coordinate animation, which we'll get into shortly. See, if it's coming over this way, then we should be expecting the thin one to sort of recede, I think. Maybe that's what's throwing me off. Yep, that's good. That's a little too exaggerated. There, now we're getting close. And the long one, thicken it out a bit. I would like to be able to sort of straighten it out a bit. There we go. Okay, and when we zoom right out, nice and subtle. Just a little bit of motion there. It'll go back and forth. It's even a little too exaggerated for my taste still. But we might just leave it as is for the sake of quickening our pace, finishing up tonight's stream. There, I don't mind that. Okay, so back to 0. We always want to be working from 0, our default. Now comes the interesting part. We start working with angles. So we want to select definitely the parent groups, and probably everything within the parent groups as well. And these are going to be our animation keyframes. Let's see. So all of these warp deformers. Because each one of these might move slightly different on its own. And so we will assign a value at -30, 0, and 30 along the x-axis, which is left to right, back and forth. We will also assign to each of them a range between -30, 0, and 30 on the y-axis, which is of course up and down. And then we are able to move stuff around like this. So default values, scarf on. So let's unlink these and start playing around with this. So when we look all the way to the left here, that's x going to -30. When that happens, what do we want to happen with the scarf? We want the long portion so we select the long parent to select everything within that group. We want it to slide to the left and up slightly to account for it sort of moving with the neck as it goes back. Let's see how that looks. I think I would like it to raise up a little more. There, that's good. And consequently, when we move to the right, we want it to move in the other direction. Maybe not quite as much. We also want it to rotate a bit, I believe, which will allow it to move a little bit more. What's that look? And that is simulated motion right there. Want to rotate that a little bit. Allow a little more motion there. Don't like that it covers up the zipper entirely. Okay, so that's the top portion, and we'll mess around with the detailing on it as well in a minute. But now let's get the other two pieces, because just like that, it looks pretty static. That's not the best that we can do. So we'll reset that to 0. Now let's select the big group. Where's that? Big parent? Okay. So at -x, or -30 on the x-axis, we want it to move ever so slightly to the left to cover up the shoulder there. But we also probably want a bit of deformation here. And so this deformer will deform the whole group, including every other piece that's in there. So that moves, that's good. We'll probably tweak the detail piece itself to get where we want it. And along with that, we have to move the small piece as well. So we select the small parent, it moves over. That might be all it takes to move from 0 to negative. I think we want to tweak this a bit so that it covers up the back there. Make it look like it's moving with the whole neck. A little much. Definitely need to raise it up though. There, that's not bad. And then we'll mirror it on the other side. There, maybe that's what was bugging me. Okay, now we switch over to the other side. So, we've got the mid part moving, but it's the only one that has a keyframe set for it right now. So let's go with the big parent. So that'll move over slightly, ever so slightly. We'll deform it so that it covers up the back there. And the small piece it to sort of recede like the big piece did. Okay, big piece needs... yeah, to recede like that. Not all the way, but it can't be... I don't want these lines to end up touching. What are we missing here? That travels up the back. So big piece should do the same when it comes over here. There we go. Small parent. No, small one, thank you. Come down just a bit. Still cover up that neck. Ooh, don't like that. That's quite a bit of movement. That's 0. What are we noticing here? Better. All right, not bad, not bad. I think it's a little exaggerated still. The amount of hours I've spent making fine tweaks to these models is lunacy, I tell you. Okay, small one is moving too much to the left. Small one, I said, is moving too much to the left. Alright, that's not bad motion. Especially when you see the whole thing. We're only going to be moving back and forth very subtly. So that's pretty good for a scarf. Again, our head movement doesn't go to extremes all that often. Alright, now comes my least favorite part, which is vertical motion. So when the head moves up and down, we want to track those pieces with it. So let's start with head going all the way up, because at least we can see it better. So what we want to do here is we want all of the parent pieces to move up with the body slightly. There's the control, here we go. That on its own doesn't look terrible, but we do want it to move slightly different for each piece. So the big parent piece going up, we want it to pull out from this group just a bit. Manu says, I can't do any motion, so you a pro for sure. I imported my model in Live2D, tried to move one eye for 1 hour, went to Fiverr. That's something I'd kind of be interested in doing is... Well, here's the thing, is... For the longest time, I just assumed that if you made the model, you'd probably want to rig it yourself, like those artists would do it as well. It just seems like you'd have a better innate knowledge of it. But I don't know, I'd kind of be interested in working on other live 2D models as well, just because I haven't seen sort of the behind the scenes of other people's work. I've only got my own stuff to play around with. I've got nothing else to compare it to. Alright, we want this side sort of recede. Back part can expand. And then we'll add a bit of curvature to it. That was your goal, but I realized I couldn't. I mean, if you want to play around with my model, do let me know. I trust you. What could we add to Manayu's model? You know what? That would be a really fun thing to do for another art stream. Not just Manayu, but other streamers that we're friendly with, to add stuff to their model. Either try to replicate their style, which we could give a shot at, or just add Spaceman style sketchy stuff into it. Oh, your artist was a friend of yours that didn't even know what a VTuber was. That seems bizarre, doesn't it? Like, it's normal that your everyday average Joe off the street, John Q. Spaceman, wouldn't know what a VTuber is. But if you're engaged with the artistic world, it seems kind of hard to avoid, don't you think? You're gonna tighten the neck when it comes up to sort of give the illusion of it receding back there. And the last thing that we want to do is take the long group, and we just want it to rise up as the head pulls back. I don't know. She's a freelancer and her husband too, so maybe they just don't get involved. Yeah, it's entirely possible. But I mean, you said they did your model, right? Which is definitely the kind of work you expect to see out of people who do VTuber work and stuff like that. She made a Twitter just so she could follow me and see her finished product. Well, that's cool. So is she into the into VTubers now? She gets the gist of it. All right, scarf pulls up. Good. Now for the downward motion. Oh, you know what? I just noticed I've had my idle hands out this whole time. There we go, back on the tablet. She studied for me with all the cutting and stuff. She said she used to do animation too. Oh, nope. Still not into VTubers, but still a gamer. Well, that's cool, at least. So she did all that work just to make the perfection that is the Manayu model. How about that? Now, Manayu, you were streaming for a couple months at least before I got started with all this stuff. Did you ever have any other model, or was this your first one, the one that you use now? All right, bring those parts down. Follow the motion of the head. You learned what a VTuber was 2 weeks before you started streaming? Wow. So you got into it fast. Well, you had a lovely janky V-Roid model. Oh, cool. You know what? That was something that I was for about a month and a half. that's something I'd considered before I got started with this was, do you want to go 2D or do you want to go 3D? Ultimately, I thought 2D was more expressive. And for me, it was always first and foremost, all right, this is going to be an experiment in independent broadcasting, more so than anything else. So you got to be able to self-produce, you got to be able to inject some personality and your own aesthetic, your own style into everything. So that's why I ultimately went with the 2D one. I thought we could, there's just a little more personality in the 2D models than in the 3D ones. Now technically we have done 3D work in the past, but we've never been as good at it. With a lovely receding hairline? Oh, okay. So no wonder you kick that one to the curb pretty quick. Yeah, I thought 2D was more personalized and I wanted her to look like me as much as possible. Well, there you go. Same. I mean, behind the veneer of all this internet stuff, all these facial trackings, aren't we just a 3-foot-tall, big-headed spaceman? She's still cute, though. What, your V-Roid one? The one who's balding? We'll have to dig up some old screenshots of that or something. What was I gonna say? Right, you said 2 weeks before you started streaming. That's a pretty quick turnover. I think before we started doing this, I decided, okay, Spaceman, you're gonna take like a month, a full month, to get all the learning down, all the OBS stuff, all of the Live2D stuff. And that was all of my October, basically. I thought we'll go live on November 1st, and that's exactly what we did. And you know what I didn't realize? Was how... what's the word? How standardized, I guess, a whole lot of the engagement with some VTubers can be. Like, I had no concept of something like debuts or anything like that. I just thought, all right, well, we're ready to go. We'll just flick the switch. We'll see who shows up. And, you know, luckily enough, we had one viewer on our first stream. It's Moonlight Peacock. Always willing to give a shout out to him, our very first viewer, our very first follower. But the only sort of promotion that we did was, I think I made one post on the VTuber Reddit. Just like, hey guys, I'm going live in a few hours. Why not stop by? I wish I had gotten a little more engaged with stuff like Twitter and other networking avenues beforehand. Because now I see people who have got like however many 100 followers and they haven't even started streaming yet. I think that's wild. Those are people who definitely know how to market themselves. Spaceman's definitely more niche. I'll admit to that. Alright, look at that. That's a pretty good transition. We just gotta lower the long portion. Yeah, I saw someone with 2,000 followers do their first stream this week and get affiliated. Wow. See, yeah, that seems like the way to do it. We're averaging like 1 follower a day, basically. But then I don't want to do stuff like, I see a lot of people who do things like giveaways and follow for chance to wins and stuff like that. I'm not saying it feels sleazy, I'm just saying, I don't know, does it feel too corporate sometimes? Too business-like? you and I just went into it. Yeah, we just didn't know what we were doing. Alright, that's good motion right there. Left, right. Looking good. Now here's what I mean when I talk about if you don't set up your parameters properly. So say we accidentally left our Y angle halfway between one of these, and then we started editing the X and Y, that would mess us up so bad. But thankfully we know what we're doing here, so now let's zero these values out. And here's the fun thing, that the tech that I wish we had back in the Flash days. Because motion tweening was a bit more difficult to get looking natural. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to link these two parameters, and we are going to select all of the warp deformers within this scarf group. How long did it take you to understand parameters? Somewhere within that month. I think it just took me 1 or 2 big mistakes and having to redo a lot of work, and that learned me pretty quick. Alright, so we've selected all those. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to select synthesize corners. So back in the day where we had to manually create those parallax effects, this is going to help us with that. So the program has a built-in function that'll synthesize basically all the missing space in here. Oh, and you know what? We're actually going to deselect the scarf parent because that's not on this parameter. That's just on opacity. Alright, so we're going to synthesize corners between angle X and angle Y for the selected objects. We're going to hit OK. Okay, that disappears because it zeroes everything out. Turn scarf back on, and now we can move this around as if we were head tracking, just to give ourselves a bit of a preview. And doesn't that look decent? Now, so you seeing it in motion, I don't love the long part of the scarf. I think if we were doing it a little more in depth, we would have broken that into a few different pieces so that it could sort of sway with the back and forth motion. That's another thing that you can do in Live2D. I don't know if you have any physics-based parts on your model, Manu. We don't have any on ours, but Live2D can also simulate physics in the sense of dangling objects, things like hair or scarves would be a good use of it, where you can whip around real fast and the program will synthesize that motion and sort of let the pieces fly and dangle and do that. Okay, so your hair does that? Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. When you like bounce and stuff like that, yeah, I think I've seen that. Alright, but I think that's good enough for a first run holiday scarf. The only other thing we have to do is make sure that when scarf gets turned on, that the underlying collar gets turned off, just so they don't slip by and we don't see anything underneath. I didn't notice any clipping on that XY test, but just to be sure. Select the whole collar. Give it scarf keyframes. And when scarf turns on, collar turns off. So we only have one on at any given time. And if we go all the way up, yeah, you never see under the neck, so that's good. Okay, so it's not quite done yet. The next thing that we have to do, we're going to save that. And then we have to go into a different program, actually. We have to go into the Live2D viewer, not the editor, but the viewer. So we gotta drop or open a Mach 3 file. So we'll go and open the one that we're working on, the production model. Actually, is it gonna let us open it when we have it open? Let's find out. Where do we keep you? Under Live2D, there we go. Production model. Okay, so here's the viewer, and you can see it's doing its blinking animations, it is doing its swaying animations, and if we click anywhere it'll look toward the cursor. So actually I'm pretty sure that there are some people who don't have facial tracking software, who don't have webcam setups and things like that. So instead what they do is they just use the viewer and they manually control how their fellow looks around. I'm sure it works for a lot of models better if they don't have visible mouths, because the only other way to control that would be through key presses. And you know what? I was actually in a real interesting discussion on Twitter a couple of weeks ago about... They had sort of posited the question, hey, what would the internet have been like, or what would VTubing have been like if VTubers got popular in, say, 2004 instead of, you know, 2019 or 2020 or whenever it was, whenever they really took off. And that got me thinking about, you know, what would we do with the tech back at the time? Technically, we could still simulate all the depth of motion through something like Flash or any image editing software, but we probably would use Flash just because it was the lightweight web browser. So if you were doing any sort of a web browser embedding software, so if you were doing any sort of online thing at the time, it was either that or Shockwave, I guess, but that's really just video encoding. You know, this was long before HTML5, so... And it probably would have been more like early Let's Play videos or skits, you know, short animations, more so than long-form streams. Because back in 2004, I don't know about any of you guys, but I certainly didn't have the greatest internet connection. I'm pretty sure I still knew people who were still on dial-up at the time, so I'm definitely sure that we couldn't maintain the sort of long-form streams that we do now. Alright, so here's what we do with the viewer. We are going to add an expression. An expression is a file that is going to be saved, which sort of captures a parameter position. So we're going to add an expression and we're going to call it scarf.xp3.json, and the expression name is going to be scarf. There we go. And now we select, what does scarf mean? Well, scarf just means that... Where is scarf here? Oh, you know what happened? I opened the last export, so we can't just save the production model. We have to export it. All right, hold on a sec. Close this down. No, we don't need to save that. No, we don't need to save that. We gotta go back in here. We need to export for runtime, export as Mach 3 file. So this is what actually gets imported into software like VTube Studio. Okay. And we'll go ahead and save that where we save our good stuff. Yeah, we can overwrite the other one. So this will be part of our up-to-date production model. Because we're pretty pleased with this scarf that we got. Monty says barely had a computer at that point. Well, how rare was it that you'd even have your own personal computer? Those were the days where, like, your family had one computer, right? I know that was the case for us. Okay, so we've got that exported. Yep. Okay, now we should be able to do it. Let's see, add an expression. And is that down there? Yes. All I wanted was to watch AMVs in peace. Right? Somebody had to get on. They had schoolwork. They had a project. They had to check their mail. Problem with having siblings too, right? Or a big family. Alright, so what we're going to do here, for this particular scarf expression, we're going to tell the software that what it means is that we're going to activate the scarf parameter, and we're going to set the value of that to 1. So when we activate the scarf expression, that flips those values, scarf comes on. Now let's go ahead and export. All expression motion, I believe is what we want to do. Put that in the same file. Yep, youngest of 4. Oh, wow. Spaceman was the eldest of his space fam. But we still had some others that we had to fight for computer time and console time and stuff like that. Okay, so we've successfully saved our scarf expression file. And we don't need to save the actual JSON file itself. We can close that down. Now comes the interesting part. I wonder if this is going to work. Let me try something here real quick. We're gonna have to take the model offline. So excuse me for just 1 second. Zip up. I thought I had that set on a fade. Alright, kidnapped, yeah. Just popped out of existence. Alright, and we're gonna open up YouTube Studio. And we're gonna try to add a new expression. Now the problem is that technically going to be considered a new model? Let's find out. Oh, hold up. So the question is, can we just plug the scarf in? The answer is probably not. We're probably going to have to import a whole new model. But that'll only take a second. Let's see here. Only thing that might glitch out on us is the fact that we won't have our tracking, what do you call them? Preferences set up. Okay, let's give this a whirl then. Yeah, so this is what happens. We lose all of that tracking preference data, unfortunately. But that's okay, we're just going to show this off briefly. Give me just one sec here. Okay, let's turn the model back on. So, perceptibly, no real difference, right? Now let's show what goes on behind the scenes here. Yoink, there we go. So that's the spaceman that exists within the black void of space, operating within the VTube Studio environment. So that's doing all the tracking and what have you. And what we're going to do now, going to go into our settings, and that you can see the facial tracking in action. And we want to go over here to hotkey settings, and we're going to add ourselves a new hotkey. The action type is going to be setting, or unsetting rather, an expression. Key combination, let's just make it simple. Usually we've got these set up on a side keyboard deck sort of device here. Let's say we want to press Control, not S because that's saving stuff, but say Control, numpad 5. 5 because it looks like an S, S for scarf. And we'll just call this scarf. And the expression for this is saved within the same file, or file folder, as the model we just imported, so it's the only one we have here at the moment. We'll call it scarf. X out of that, and then if we zip back to our regular screen, we should be able to press Control 5. Oh. Not activating? Why is this? Alright, hold on. did we do wrong here? Let's see. Alright, how about we just set it as something real simple. Just hit Q or something. Set onset expression. It shouldn't have a problem with that. So what is the dealio, yo? Oh, because we didn't... This is why, and let me show this off. Because we did not activate use keyboard hotkeys. As soon as we hit that, then we should have no problem. Let's head back on over and... Scarf, look at that! So that's a scarf in motion right there. Our eye tracking and mouth tracking is a little off compared to normal. And also we're seeing... Oh yeah, we're seeing some definite excess swaying due to the idle animation. We should have parented that to the long portion itself. No, it definitely doesn't look perfect because that scarf is going for a ride. But we'll be able to fix that up pretty easily in post. But that, let it swing away. But that, it does look like it's windy, which is weird for a space station, I suppose. But that's the behind-the-scenes look, start to finish, of how we make some assets for the Spaceman character. Yasuhiro, thanks for tuning in, or, sorry, not Yasuhiro, Dragon Durant of the Yasuhiro 0088. Another fellow spaceman. Thanks for tuning in, I hope you're having a great day. You're just catching the end of our stream here. We're making some holiday-themed assets for the Spaceman model. Oh, my mouth is going wild here, jeez. Because we had to import that new model. All of our old presets are all messed up. Oh, sets in the chat too. We got all sorts of action in the chat. I'll try to fix this up after the stream. We're not going to be live tomorrow, so I'll probably take some time to put a few finishing touches on it, and then we'll have it added to the regular model. We can sport it when we come back on Thursday. But that was fun, wasn't it? Our first little art stream. Like I said, 2 birds with 1 stone, right? We get to show off the process, and we get to make some new assets for the channel. Laylax H, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for helping out the channel. Thank you for the stream. Oh, it's our pleasure. I should really pay more attention to users in chat. Oh, look at this. We got a number of people kicking around. Well, I hope you all enjoyed getting to see the janky Spaceman art in action. You know, I sort of take it for granted how many people involved with the VTuber scene, you know, don't do their own models, don't do their own rigging, all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure for everybody it's a neat little peek behind the curtain. You get to see how the hot dog gets made, so to speak. Not quite as gross, I hope. But I think that about wraps it up for tonight, everybody. We'll turn off our festive holiday musics. And we'll get ready for the outro. I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight, everybody, wherever and whenever you are. Now, like I said, we're going to be offline tomorrow for a little work around the station, and I'm going to have to clean up some of these scarf parts. But altogether, we had a pretty good stream, didn't we? And we'll be back on Thursday at a regular weekday time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern, right here at Harbor Station. We'll catch you on the other side, everybody. Until then, of course, thanks for tuning in. You know, whatever life throws your way, good luck and Godspeed. Thanks for showing up, everybody. I hope you had a great evening. Have a great Wednesday. We'll see you all later in the week. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.